overpowering. It's very hard to describe it, but it was taken over, you know. And I looked at the tourists, and they didn't appear to be affected. I could see that it was just me. So.
Did you hear anything? I mean.
No, not at that point. But I started feeling a great anxiety, just a suffocating, horrible feeling. So I proceeded down, and then, as I started, I kept going to the end of this little trail, and then I heard women and children.
You heard women and children what?
Well, they were wailing, they were crying. The noises were coming from the ruins.
What were you thinking?
Well, I've never experienced anything that even approaches this, so I was just very confused, and I wanted to just start to scream, and I turned around and just left there. You know,
it scared the life out of you, didn't it?
Yes, yeah. I was pretty scared.
Well, we also have your wife, Dena, here. Dena, thanks for being with us. Now, you were with him the whole time. Did you notice anything unusual was going on?
I sure did. As he was on the trail, he suddenly turned and started practically running down the trail. And there was almost a look of terror on his face. I could tell that he was really scared. And he ran past me. So I caught up with him, took his arm, and I said, "Is there a problem?" And he said, "Get me out of here. I have to scream." And he started crying. And so I led him off the path away from the other tourists, and we found a place to sit, and he composed himself somewhat, yeah. But he was so weak he could hardly walk.
So when you got home, did it pass? Were you okay when you got home?
No. Well, when we got home, I was 2 weeks, so I rested. I told my wife I was going to rest. I could hardly make it. But anyway, I laid down, and I don't know how, slept a couple of hours. This was still in the daytime, so I woke up, and I started getting up, and immediately I noticed like something had happened to my throat. And I looked up, and my wife was there.
Yeah, Dena, what did you see? You noticed something on his neck.
He had a red welt all the way around his neck, about the size of my finger. And it looked like a rope burn. It was raw and very red.
How long did this last?
It lasted about a month over a month, about a month and a half.
Did you go to the doctor?
Yes, about a week and a half. A week into this, I found no relief. I started spitting blood, and that really concerned me. So that never ceased. I kept I just kept spitting blood. And I went to a doctor, and he put me through all kinds of testing, and everything proved normal. He said it was beyond. I told him what had happened.
So you were, in the end, even with the doctor, you were left without an adequate explanation. Something happened to you that you couldn't explain, and the doctor couldn't explain. Okay. Well, we took Rudy back to the site of his encounter with the spirits, who caused him so much pain. We'll find out what happened when we come back. Will you see this?
Still ahead on the other side, in the dark.
And I suddenly heard, "Tell her to leave."
Or even waiting in the daylight.
I started seeing bodies falling from the cliff.
Ordinary people terrorized by unearthly spirits.
I felt a hot hand in my back, and it pushed me down the stairs.
Threatened by dark forces from beyond the grave.
It's indescribable, the horror you go through.
Help, a ghost is scaring me to death, continues.
Welcome back to the other side. Could a ghost be out there ready to terrify you or even hurt you? Well, here's what happened when we sent a prominent team of paranormal researchers, Howard Heim and Jorianne, to accompany Rudy and Dena back to the scene of the haunting. This is Montezuma's castle in Arizona, and what our ghost hunters found there. Watch this.
Of course, then here we start coming into view to the main exhibit.
Oh, yeah.
And we kept viewing the ruins, paying note to all these caves. That have appeared to have had somebody build doorways, like you can see there in the cliffs. But everything appeared normal.
Okay.
And the moment I stepped right here, it was just like stepping into Even the temperature changed. And I kept walking. And about here, I started feeling a great anxiety. But there was other people with me, and I kind of looked at them, and I felt a lot of anxiety here. I walked up to about here, and then voices started.
Are you okay?
I can stay here. God, I didn't think it was going to happen. Yeah. I can feel some kind of a pain, an anxiety. It's just terrible there.
Yeah.
Howard, what's causing all this pain for Rudy? What's going on?
Yeah, I was on top of the situation right where it happened. I was getting nothing on any of my equipment, but Jorianne picked up something that she'd be better to
Jorianne, yeah,
question.
what did you find? What's going on, Jorianne?
What seemed to be happening was the whole area is full of a lot of high, intense emotional energy. When we had started the investigation, getting out of the car, I had felt a heaviness. I felt pressure on my shoulders and on my head. We were walking up with Rudy, and as though it was an invisible movie, I started seeing bodies falling from the cliff, as you had been showing on the screen, the mountain. Bodies, but they were all men's bodies of Indians. And as Rudy had walked me up there, up the path and stuff, it actually felt as though we actually crossed over a threshold of some sort. And there was a denseness, a thickness to the air. And suddenly I was seeing in the area that Rudy was experiencing all that intense emotion, women and children burning. And they were crying, they were tormenting, they were burning.
You had a sense of this, but it obviously didn't carry you. You weren't overcome with emotion as Rudy was. So why is Rudy overcome with this?
My feeling is this. It feels to me, with the rope burn that appeared on his neck, the deep, intense emotion that he had during this experience, I truly feel that this is some sort of past life reaction.
Past life reaction?
I truly feel that.
In Rudy?
Yes. I believe that he's been there before, because why isn't anyone else reacting to this in this way? I can see it, but why isn't anyone else reacting with this intense emotion?
Have you ever been regressed?
No.
You've not?
I'd like to point out something, Will. He's been there twice before the main incident with absolutely no reaction, so it's not like every time he goes there. He didn't expect it to happen during the filming.
Okay.
My question is directed to the young lady in black. You said that the meter picked up some type of activity. Could it be that the activity was from your own bodies and not anywhere else?
Well, I believe Howard is the one that uses the instrument.
Yeah, Howard,
take
us through these instruments, Howard. What does this do? You're like a ghostbuster, essentially, right?
Well, I investigate.
You investigate,
claims of hauntings.
So what can this tell you?
Okay, this will pick up electromagnetic fields, and what it will show me on the needle reaction is disturbances in them. Ghosts have been known to disturb the electromagnetic field. You can track them on these things.
Okay. What's the history of that area?
Yeah, good question. What's going on in that area? Was there, in fact, some disaster involving women and children in that area?
We didn't know anything about it. All we know about it is that natives lived in that area and disappeared without any explanation about 600 years ago.
Well, when we come back, now the doctors called it wife beating, but the husband said it was a ghost. Who are you going to believe? Stay tuned.
When the other side continues.
I wake up, I have bruises all over my legs, my arms.
Strange and terrifying stories of people threatened by dark spirits. Then, later,
we saw balls of light flying around the house.
A professional ghost hunter gets more than he bargained for. Stay with us.
She was beaten by a ghost. Would you believe her? Well, that's our next story. Joining us now is Donna Hrynko. Welcome, Donna. Thanks for joining us. When was the first time you came to believe or knew that it was a ghost and not just a dream?
When I woke up and saw this decayed skeleton hand coming through my bedroom window 11 years ago when we first moved into the house.
You were fully awake. You had awakened.
I woke up out of sleep about 2 a.m.
And a skeletal hand was coming?
Decaying skeletal hand was coming through my bedroom window. Not once, but 5 times.
Okay. Now, we've heard stories like this before, you know, people in their house, some paranormal experience, but this got worse. This got violent, didn't it? Tell us about what happened, how this progressed.
My husband and I were both sleeping one night, and between 2 and 3 a.m., we both sat bolt straight up in the bed, looked up, our ceiling fan looked like it was on fire and falling. He ran to the kitchen to turn the light on, and there was nothing there. The ceiling fan was perfectly fine.
But together, simultaneously, you each woke up.
Right.
And so the ceiling fan on fire.
On fire and falling.
Did this, and this violence began to escalate, right? Tell us, it became personal.
Matter of fact, we just had we just moved back into our house 2 weeks ago. We had a fire. At first they said it was the dryer, then they said no, careless smoking, and then they finally said no, it's spontaneous combustion.
But now here's where it gets a little bit controversial and uncomfortable, because you began to be physically injured. Tell us about this.
I could go to bed perfectly fine. I wake up, I have bruises all over my legs, my arms, for no reason. And my husband doesn't move in his sleep. He's a still sleeper.
And, of course, the question, you know, that people want to raise, what happened?
Yeah, I went to the doctor. The doctor said, what is your husband doing, beating you? And I said, no.
Yeah.
I said, I'm waking up like this. And I said, this is getting to the point where we're ready to sell the house.
Yes, yeah.
And just move in with my in-laws.
Well, we have on the phone now, we have Donna's husband, Bill. Bill, are you there?
Yes.
Pretty tough situation to be in. What's your response to the suspicions that you might be the cause of these injuries?
Well, I know I don't beat my wife, and as far as, you know, when we're sleeping, 2.5 years ago I had severe back surgery, and it was painful just to move. So you tend to learn to, you know, basically lay very still.
So you're not, again, you're not wrestling. A couple of times I've turned over in my sleep and whapped my wife. You know, it wasn't intentional. At least I don't, psychologically it might be, I don't know. But she's actually wrapped me back a couple of times too. But this actually, this is ongoing and chronic. What do you think this is, Bill? What's your suspicion?
To be honest with you, I really don't know. I'm at a loss for it.
You're both baffled by this.
We think it has something to do with my cousin who was murdered 2 years ago, or my mom who was killed by a drunk driver 4 years ago.
Really? You had a cousin murdered and your mom was killed by a drunk driver. So 2 violent deaths, and so what are you saying? You suspect that?
It could be my cousin, you know, trying to get my attention to open up like we were talking, he wanted me to reopen the file. Because the guy only got 2 years in prison.
Yeah. So I see. So there's some dissatisfaction,
right, exactly.
You speculate that the spirit of your cousin may be what, trying to get your attention by injuring you?
You know,
frantically trying to get you.
Right, and saying, Donna, go do something, get more. Yeah. Get him to stay in prison longer. He deserves longer because he died as very tragic.
Jorianne, you went to Donna's house, didn't you? And
yes.
You're a psychic, and you've been through this before. What do you think's going on?
Going to Donna's house, now that was very, very interesting. Going into the house, I had a hard time breathing. It was very, very, very stressful, a lot of tension in the house. And I started seeing shadows out of the side of my eye, you know, poltergeist activity, as I would perceive it. I had a wonderful feeling come over me, and I heard Karen. And I said, who's Karen? And Karen is Donna's mother. And I suddenly heard, tell her to leave. Tell her to get out of this house.
A warning from the spirit of her mother to get out of the house.
Positively.
Are you convinced about this? Yeah, you are. So, what are you going to do? You're going to sell the house? You are. Is this a house that has a history? In other words, whether the people before you know anything about this house?
No.
Bill, do you know?
No, I do know it's a very old house.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's no real history that I know of.
You going to move, Bill?
I'm willing.
You're willing. Your wife seems pretty upset.
Definitely.
Do you ever feel these injuries when they're happening to you at night?
The only one I've ever felt is one that I still have, and I've had it for 6 months. It's on my left outer thigh. Otherwise, the rest of the bruises I don't know until I wake up.
You wake up with them.
Have you ever thought about speaking to a priest or getting your house exorcised?
Had it done.
You did? You had your house exorcised?
Yes.
What was the result? What did they say?
Howard can answer
Howard?
that.
Well, we were called in, both Jorianne and I took the case on, and my meters were showing erratic electromagnetic disturbances where there was no electricity. And that's the same places she picked up spirit activity. And we brought in another psychic who does exorcisms, who's my wife, also named Karen, which was funny. And she spent close to 2 hours, maybe, doing spiritual exorcism. And at that time, I was monitoring. We were all at a table monitoring the meter, and it was going berserk. And we were all experiencing excruciating physical pain, as if it was trying to convince her to tell us to stop.
You were experiencing pain.
Exactly. I had like a tremendous vice, as something was drilling my temples. It was very uncomfortable.
I was vomiting. I had asthma attack, chest pains, migraine. And I told them, no, keep going.
And nothing works. Is it still? It's still in the same. You're still in the same situation.
Oh no, that
That's
cured
gone.
it. That actually cured it.
But now we have something else. My sister moved into. We have a 2-flat that we own, and my sister moved into the 2nd floor. And a couple weeks ago, she heard a woman sobbing in her bathroom, and she thought it was me at 4 a.m.
And went in there.
And then she said, "Donna, is that you?" And then she said, "Wait a minute. Donna doesn't get up till 5 a.m. Not at 4 a.m."
And it wasn't you. So she experienced this.
So
too.
now she's hearing something too. So now we have to go through it all over again.
Different apartment, but it's owned by the same.
It's the same building.
It's the same building.
Okay. Well, what happens when a ghost hunter gets hunted? We'll find out when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Other Side. Is it possible for a ghost hunter to have the tables turned and have ghosts hunt him? Well, that's what Barry Taff says happened to him. Barry, thanks for being here. First of all, what's your background as a ghost hunter? Tell us about your experience and credentials.
Well, initially, I worked for 10 years out of UCLA's former parapsychology laboratory. That evolved into 27 years of formal research in this area, over which I've investigated in excess of 3,300 cases, one of which became the motion picture The Entity, starring Barbara Hershey.
Okay, so you've been through this stuff before, and this is a rare event you're going to describe now, right? This does not happen very often to you?
In my own life, I never have these things happen to me, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective. One of my good friends got married, was on his honeymoon, wanted me to house at his new home. I thought, great, a big pool, built-in barbecue, I'll have a lot of fun, maybe have some friends over for a party during the summer. What he forgot to tell me was, or purposely didn't tell me, that the house was haunted. Upon arriving, it was a beautiful home, set my belongings down on the bed, turned around, they were on the floor. Put them back on the chair, they were on the floor again. Then the sound system ended up on the floor. This evolved that night into bangings on the walls, knockings on the glass panes, footsteps, voices, the burglar alarm, the security system going on and off repeatedly, TVs turning on by themselves, even without their plugs being put in. It got very annoying. The next morning, 6:08, something pinched me, woke me up. Now, this is going to sound unbelievable, but it did happen. The bed goes down next to me, the covers go up, and I feel a body roll into me, and there's nothing physically there. But I smell it, and I feel it. It's a female. And I went to grab it after the shock. I got over the initial shock. Figured what
it's like, wait. Whoa, okay. Yeah.
But in all reality, I wasn't frightened because there was no threat posed to me. So I went to grab it. The covers rebounded as the mattress rebounded, and it was gone. This kept going. Then it started stealing my food. I brought home a sandwich, put it on the table, came back. The sandwich was bitten in half, and there were teeth marks to the remaining half.
Barry?
The first half was gone. Then an ice cream cake was brought in the house. Half the ice cream cake disappeared.
Man.
Isn't it unusual to have a new house haunted? I know I've seen a lot of the old houses and really old things haunted.
The house isn't new. It was over 40 years old. So it wasn't a new home at all. And there had been activity long before I was called into the house, again, to house it.
Why do some ghosts get angry?
Well, we don't know what the source is, except that it seems to sometimes react to different people in the environment. In this particular case, the phenomena grew even more intense. We saw balls of light flying around the house, which we were able to photograph. They looked like ball lightning. They were ejecting or sputtering like plasma. And then the worst thing happened towards the end of my stay. I was in the kitchen on the phone. I heard a grinding noise. I turned. A huge wrought iron table was propelled across the room into my side. It almost cracked a rib. It raised a huge welt.
Well, here's a paranormal investigator who never met a ghost she didn't like. Thank you for coming, Barbara Gallagher. First of all, what's your make on what's happening to Donna? What do you think's happening to Donna?
Donna has an enormous amount on her plate. She has experienced these kinds of things for over a period of 11 years. And as a result, and just by the way, the evidence is good. We had a chance to talk before the show. The evidence is very good that there is a paranormal phenomena occurring throughout this pattern of events.
As opposed to the suspicion that some have that this is some problem between, that you're having other than this.
Right, but I think interwoven and very, very intertwined with all of that is a psychological overlay, which we talked about earlier, which either exacerbates or enhances or perpetuates the paranormal phenomena. And by the way, I think that's what's happening in most cases.
You don't believe in the notion of an angry ghost, do you?
I'm not saying that I don't believe in it. I'm saying let's maybe relook at the interpretation. When people get excited, anxious, say fearful, it tends to color our perceptions about what we're seeing. Automatically, if I identify you as bad, I've set up an adversarial situation. Yeah. Suddenly, then a dynamic begins to take place. Things escalate, and it continues to feed.
Becomes like an interpretation if you're locked into the negative. Yeah, but like, a table flying across and whanging me in the side, how do you find the good in that? I mean,
that's Barry.
That's Barry?
It's Barry.
Maybe what, Barry needed it?
Barry needed it. Keeps them in
really?
shape.
What do you make about that when people have those experiences where they're hurt by something? Something falls on them, or they trip down the stairs, or...
But in the majority of cases, 98%, maybe 99%, the phenomenon is playful, mischievous. Very rarely do you get phenomena that's harmful. It's extremely uncommon.
So in your 27 years, you've not encountered this hardly at all?
No, 5 to 6 cases in over 3,300. Wow. So it's a real small percent.
Well, coming up next, a ghost who brought a family to the brink of divorce. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Other Side. Could a haunted house actually break up a marriage? It almost caused a divorce for our next guest. Wanda Gezik joins us with her daughter, Amanda. Thank you for joining us. Was this house sort of the old, typical, creepy kind of haunted house?
It was a brand new house. We just built it modern, mid-level entry, brand new, beautiful.
It's almost like the house of your dreams, the house you were enthused to be in.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when did things start happening? When did the haunting start?
Shortly after we started, it was playful things to begin with. Like we would be downstairs in the family room, and you would hear someone running upstairs. And you'd go running upstairs to see who's upstairs. Nobody's upstairs. You would hear someone running up the stairs, and there's no one running up the stairs. And then it sort of progressed into you would hear chairs being knocked over. You'd go upstairs, there's no chairs being knocked over. And then pretty soon the children started seeing a little girl upstairs in the hall.
In the hall, right, Amanda? Tell us about this.
Next to my parents' bedroom, I saw a little girl who had blonde hair and was wearing a white dress standing next to where my mother's bedroom and bathroom met.
And what happened? I mean, you just stood there and what?
Well, you're walking down the hallway, and all of a sudden you see someone that you've never seen before and looks a lot younger than what you are, and it's like, excuse me, and then they're not there anymore.
Just disappeared in front of you?
Yeah.
Was it scary?
In a way, but in a way it wasn't, because it didn't look scary.
It didn't like hurt her or something like that.
It looked like just a little girl. And how can you be afraid of a little girl?
Well, a little girl ghost may have more power than me.
Yeah. But seriously.
Yeah, and Amanda comes and they told me about it, and I said, well, don't worry about it. You know, we've been hearing a lot of noise and things, but nothing's hurt us yet.
Yeah.
And then the hurting things started.
Like what?
Then, well, in our stairwell going downstairs was a particularly bad place in the house, because about the third step from the bottom, I was repeatedly tripping on that one step. It got to the point where I would avoid that step. And then the worst incident that happened in the whole house was I was on the landing about to go downstairs, and I felt a hot hand in my back, and it pushed me down the stairs.
You were pushed down a flight of stairs.
Down the stairs.
My question is, these people are saying I got a lot of bruises, I had a lot of things happen to me. Why do you stay there? If it was me and that stuff happened, boom, I'm out of that house.
That was the problem. My husband did not see any of these things that had happened, and he didn't believe us. I kept wanting to leave the house. As a matter of fact, we did eventually leave the house, but it almost took a divorce so I could get out of the house.
And we just had the fire. We were putting our house up for sale, and the fire happened.
Now, someone had told my husband when we first moved in, oh, there was a murder committed where your house was built. And my husband didn't, you know, pay much attention to it. And then we were at a barbecue a couple years later, and we ran into a mail lady who said, oh, I used to have that route, and the people that lived in where you built your house were all murdered. And so I would tell my husband, maybe this is explaining why all
Barry,
these things are happening to me.
That could be a clue, huh, Barry?
Exactly,
You think?
but he didn't believe me.
Oh, your husband didn't believe
He goes, I don't care. He goes, you're scaring the children. You have to stop doing this.
Yeah.
Did you ever do any type of ground survey of the, of the area that was around you, any of the demographics, to see if there were, maybe you built on top of a burial ground or
We were
something?
built on a house where a member of that family had gone in and killed everyone in that family.
And we would find pieces of the house in our backyard. We would find pieces of brick and of stone and of tile. And they probably just leveled the house and built our basement on top of it instead of clearing it.
Right.
Because we would find pieces of the house in our backyard.
And you believe that there's a connection then between
Absolutely.
that?
Because he didn't just kill people in that house. He killed people next door to our house.
Right.
Has it followed you? Anything
No, it
different?
did not follow us. Immediately after we left, it did not follow us.
Barbara Gallagher, what do you make of this? I mean, this sounds pretty violent. I mean...
Well, there's a myriad of influences. I see every case is very complex, and I think that there is a misconception amongst the general public that when we go into these places, we spend a couple hours and do a few interviews, and then that's that. I mean, part of what they're describing looks like haunting phenomena, maybe some poltergeist, apparitional, and those need to be sorted out to determine what, in fact, we're looking at
But
here.
you were saying before, and it certainly makes sense at one level, that there's what I bring to an experience psychologically.
Right.
But here are different people going into the same house, different families. Are they all bringing something psychological to this phenomenon?
Well, it's very clear that this location has some kind of energy, for ease of or simplicity of talking about it, probably some sort of energy that's conducive to perpetuating this kind of thing.
Nobody ever had a problem.
Also, before you even come up with the notion that it's a discarnate entity or discarnate intelligence, you have to rule out the psychodynamics of the people living in the environment.
I love how you talk, Barry. Discarnate energy, yeah.
Well,
yeah. No, go ahead. I enjoy it. Yeah.
It's not, as Barbara said, it's a very difficult, elaborate, convoluted evaluation process that could take weeks or months of time without spending a great deal of effort with the people about their backgrounds. You'll never really come to understand the nature of the phenomenon.
Yeah.
Can these people learn to live with them? Can you communicate eventually and learn to live in the place in harmony, maybe?
How can you live in a place where they're trying to kill you?
Yeah.
If someone came into your house and was trying to kill you, would you want to go and live with them?
I've been pushed down the stairs.
Can you communicate? Is there a possibility?
In other words, can you get them to stop pushing you down the stairs? Can you make friends with these entities?
And work in harmony?
Is that conceivable? No. Well, they're probably asking the wrong group here. They've been pushed down the stairs.
I'm out of here.
Yeah, okay. Well, up next, tips on how to rid yourself of a hostile ghost. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Other Side. How can you get rid of a ghost? Let's ask our panel here. Howard, what can a person do if they're having these kinds of experiences in their house?
Well, one, they should call in a professional, someone who works with possibly a psychic and has high-tech equipment, professional-grade film, that type of thing. We would ask them to first make diaries of who's around, when it happens, times, atmospheric conditions, things of that nature. Research your land, go to a historical society, see what was there before your house was built. It could be an old cemetery from a farm back a couple of hundred years ago.
We hear that, Barry, all the time, that the space, trauma or violence or murder in the space seems to be connected.
We've had a number of houses that were haunted, literally. They were torn down. New apartment buildings or condos were built in the same space, and those new structures were haunted. So it is the physical space, not the building.
Not the building, yeah.
And sometimes you can't check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because every house that was on our block has been torn down since there, and all new houses have been built. None of the original things stand. So the people that are moving in say, oh, it's a new house, but the land is what
Underneath
has,
it.
yeah, that whole block.
Barry, have you ever been baffled by a case?
All the time.
There's probably the majority, isn't it?
I mean, just because we investigate many cases doesn't mean we understand the nature of them at all. It's still a phenomenon. That's the way it always ends up, one way or the other.
Barbara, if you don't believe that ghosts are harmful per se, that it's psychological, why is it worth going through an investigation like
Oh,
this?
absolutely. That presumes that it has no inherent value in the respect that it's a phenomena that we currently have no real paradigm to understand, no model, for rules, how it works. It's incredibly, it could tell us something about the power of ourselves, the potential of the human being.
So no, it's almost like a comfort, really. Like if a person's experiencing noises or a phenomenon, no matter what in the final analysis it turns out to be, it can be part of a recovery or healing process for someone to satisfy the mind, to bring in a professional who'll believe them and, take seriously the experience they've had, I guess, right?
For those of you that still have the structure intact, how could you in good conscience sell this house without divulging?
Because, like my husband, he didn't believe it. I mean, there are people, I could go out on the street right now and tell 10 people, my house is haunted. 9 people are not going to believe me.
Well, why do the ghosts tend to stay in that place? I mean, why can't they, go off to, that other land where they're supposed to be? Are they in purgatory or
rent
something?
somewhere else?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's really, for most people, most people believe that when you die, you go someplace. You don't hang around, Maple Street,
Sometimes they get caught between. They don't understand that they're supposed to pass over and rest.
Yeah.
And
they stay here and
Maybe
they still believe that
it's their
house,
maybe
is their domain.
They're home. Maybe they're not at peace
but
with why they die.
What about the concept of heaven? I mean, don't you believe if you die, you
but
go to
don't you
heaven or
believe there's
hell?
all kinds
Is this
of
hell? Hell is in the house that you were in?
Yeah, it was, definitely.
Yeah.
But there's
It's
all
hell for
different
you.
kinds of ghosts.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, Jorianne?
what I find when I do work, when I do find that it's a discarnate entity, I find that many times people are stuck here because maybe they've made the transition and they weren't aware that they died. If they went through a traumatic car accident, they might not have really known that they crossed over.
So that's the speculation is that they don't know they're dead. I've heard this before.
I went through a house and I did an investigation, and I said, I feel a woman wandering room to room. I said, it feels like she's had Alzheimer's. I said, and she's very confused. And after I do the investigation, because I want to know nothing ahead of time, I sit down with the people, and they said, yes, my mother-in-law had Alzheimer's. That's all she did was go from room to room to room. These people, if they're not in the level of awareness, might not know that they've totally crossed over yet.
I have a question for the specialist, I guess. When you have a ghost, that's something that has no substance, how can they move things? How can they eat things? What happens, like, when a ghost eats food? Where does it go?
Yeah.
Scientifically, of course, there's no answer to that. However, there were some documents declassified by our own Defense Intelligence Agency and the Army back in the 70s, which talked about something called force matter, which was the equivalent of matter, but just made up of energy. And it was supposed to be classified to the year 2000. So there may be another form of energy in our world that we're not aware of in the public domain.
Well, it's like the movie Ghost, when you had to learn to. You believe that? You believe that that was an accurate depiction? That you have to learn.
Yes, yes, this is for Rudy. How did your encounter change your life?
Yeah. How has it changed your life, this experience?
Well, it has, and this is the one thing that you people should understand, that the ones that haven't had the good fortune of being affected, if you do get affected, you're not going to. You don't choose. You're chosen, and before you realize it, it gets into your inside, and it just tears you inside. It's indescribable, the pain and the horror you go through, and this is the thing that we as a human race, I believe, should start to understand real fast, that we're living in some kind of a parallel. I mean, humans in the third dimension is not the only existence here, and
but this has
a
been
lot of it.
It's been a disturbing experience for you, hasn't it?
It has.
And still is unsettling to you.
It's unsettled yet. It's affected my whole life, and it will continue.
What about going to counseling to try and make some sense out of it?
I tried. Where? This is why I sent a letter to you.
Yeah.
I didn't know where to turn.
I tried that too.
psychotherapy?
And I finally wound up turning to Jorianne and Howard and Howard's wife.
Because they
said, it's not me. I'm not nuts.
Yeah.
We've investigated cases where...
I'm not nuts.
Yeah. And that's an important criteria.
Jorianne talked to my mother.
Yes. That you begin by people, that's what's nice about what you people do. You assume a posture of believing, and then let's go from here. Yeah.
Did any of you believe in ghosts before this happened?
No.
Well, I believed in angels. I've always believed in angels.
Yes,
I never believed in a ghost that could actually cause physical harm, like by pushing me or doing things like that. So I did believe, but it strengthened my belief in there are evil ghosts. That's
so you believed like in the spiritual realm,
yes.
but the positive side of it.
Right.
But this was your first encounter with
because we experienced that. We experienced good power prior to our house.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that what happened to me was a ghost.
Yeah.
I haven't figured that one out yet, but because I felt a feeling, I felt an emotion. It wasn't, it was a...
Yes, yours sounds a little unique in that it was almost a memory of a horrible circumstance that you were witnessing, and there was a sadness in you. Okay, well, can an angry ghost turn into a friendly ghost? We had that question before. More about that when we return. Talking about not just ghosts, but angry ghosts and maybe violent ghosts. You had a question here, ma'am.
Yes, I want to ask the question to the people that are going to sell their homes. How is this affecting your lifestyle? And when you move to your next home, are you going to have it investigated?
Yeah.
Well, I did that. When I sold this house, when I went to the next one, I found out there had never been a structure on the property where my house is. It was built in the middle of a great parcel of wooded area. So there's never been a structure where my new house is right now.
Did you check for a Native American burial ground, some of the other things we've heard about? Because really, isn't that true?
No, I didn't do that. I better go do that, Will.
You're remiss.
And I don't have to worry about it because I'm buying my in-laws' house.
This is a question for Rudy's wife. How does it feel? What adjustments have you had to make living with somebody who's had an experience and you haven't had one yourself?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's very painful to watch him go through this experience, and I have a feeling of helplessness that there's nothing that I can do, to help him through it.
Dena, what do you think it is, Dena? What do you think happened to him? What's your theory?
I really don't know what it is, and there appears to be some type of energy there, but why it attaches to him, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Barry, before someone's experiencing noises, and is there anything you can do on your own?
In terms of getting rid of the phenomena?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of. Other than moving, other than shouting it out, no, there's nothing I can do.
That doesn't work.
What about the person who is who's religious? I mean, can you pray? Can you have your priest or your rabbi come over? Does that work?
It's a very subjective situation. If the people really believe that prayer or exorcism or meditation will help, it'll help. If they don't believe, it won't. And since most of this stems from the human psyche of living people, it's all a question of subjectivity.
Barbara, what can people do?
Get clear about what it is you have and make a decision. Do you want it to go? People have incredible resistance, oddly enough, once you get in there to actually letting it go. And so, I mean, you really have to be very clear about what it is that you're trying to do.
You have to be determined that you want to get rid of this phenomenon, and then there are some things, obviously, that people can do. Okay, well, that's all our time. I'm sorry, I want to thank all of our guests. Thanks for joining us on The Other Side. Here's a preview of our next show.
What if the next 10 minutes are the last 10 minutes of your life?
He told me to get in the car, I'll kill you, so I got in the car.
Would there be a warning?
There was an explosion, and Captain Haynes got on the intercom and said that we've lost number 2 engine.
Would you be afraid?
I'm not prepared to die.
What will your last moments be filled with?
It was the first time in my life that I contemplated my own death.
10 minutes of terror.